My brother's hand connected with the side of my face so hard that my earring flew off into the grass somewhere and I never found it again. It was a Tuesday evening in September, and there were 43 people standing in my parents' backyard watching it happen. I know the exact number because I counted them later, going through the photos on my phone, trying to understand how 43 human beings could watch a woman get hit in the face and do nothing except look away. 8 months earlier, I had done what I thought was the right thing. My parents had been struggling. Dad's back surgery wiped out most of their savings, 2 procedures, neither fully covered by insurance, plus 6 weeks of physical therapy at a place that charged $400 a session. My mom had been working part-time at a dental office for years, but her hours got cut when the practice brought in a new office manager who wanted younger staff. They weren't destitute, they owned the house outright. But they were the kind of struggling where you cancel the cable, where you start splitting prescriptions, where you don't tell your kids, but your kids notice anyway. I was 31. I had a decent job as a senior accountant at a mid-size logistics firm in Columbus. I wasn't wealthy, but I was careful with money. The way you get careful when you watched your parents sit at the kitchen table at night whispering about the electric bill. I had savings. I had a plan. And when my dad called me in January to tell me they might have to sell the house to cover ongoing medical costs, I didn't hesitate. "You don't have to do that," I told him. "Let me help." What I did not say, but what I should have recognized, is that I was the only one who said that. My brother, who was 2 years older than me and doing considerably better financially, he worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a company car, took his wife to Cancun every spring, said nothing. He made sympathetic noises on the family group chat. He sent my parents a grocery store gift card for Christmas. He did not offer to help with a single medical bill. I covered 3 months of Dad's physical therapy. I paid for Mom's dental work when she needed a crown and a root canal in February. I set up a monthly transfer of $800 into their checking account, the kind of automatic payment that just becomes part of your life, like your electric bill, except instead of keeping your lights on, it was keeping your parents from losing their home. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself my brother would step up eventually. I told myself a lot of things. In April, Dad mentioned they were doing some updates to the house. He sounded vague about it. New water heater, he said, and maybe some work on the deck. I didn't think much about it. Old houses need maintenance. I was glad they were taking care of it. I found out what was really happening in late June, and I found out by accident. I was at my parents' house helping my mom sort through some paperwork. She'd gotten a letter from the county assessor's office about a property tax notice, and she couldn't find the previous year's documentation. We were going through the filing cabinet in a spare bedroom when I pulled out a folder I didn't recognize. Inside was a contract with a general contractor I'd never heard of. $47,000 of work, a new kitchen, new flooring throughout the main floor, a primary bathroom gut renovation. I stood there for a long moment looking at the numbers, then I kept looking through the folder. And that's when I found it, a document I recognized the format of because I work with financial paperwork for a living. It was a home equity line of credit application, and it had my signature on it, except I hadn't signed it. I knew my own signature. I'd been signing my name since I was 7 years old, and I have a very specific way I loop the letters, a habit I picked up from a teacher in 3rd grade who had beautiful handwriting and taught us fountain pen technique one afternoon as a side project. My signature has a loop. This one didn't. This one was close, but it wasn't mine. I put the folder back exactly where I found it. I helped my mom find the tax paperwork. I went home and I sat in my car in the parking garage of my apartment building for 22 minutes before I went inside. The home equity line of credit was for $60,000. It had been taken out in both my name and my father's name, using the house as collateral, the house my parents owned outright, the house that I now realized I had apparently co-signed to borrow against. I had not co-signed anything. I called a lawyer the next morning, a real estate attorney named Mr. O.C. who had been recommended to me by a colleague. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my brother. I went to Mr. Mencher. Osei's office on my lunch break, and I laid out everything I had, the contractor documents, the photos I'd taken of the HELOC paperwork on my phone, my bank statement showing the $800 a month I'd been sending, the physical therapy receipts I paid directly. Mr. Osei looked at the signature page for a long time. "This is document fraud," he said. "Someone used your name and forged your signature to secure a loan against real property. That's a felony." "I know," I said. "I just need to know what to do next," he told me. And I listened very carefully. The party was my brother's idea. He'd been promoted, regional sales director, which meant more money, a bigger territory, and apparently the kind of ego that requires a catered event in your parents' backyard to celebrate properly. My mom called me in August to tell me about it. She sounded excited. 40-something people, a tent rental, a catering company from a restaurant my brother and his wife liked. "Who's paying for all this?" I asked. "Your brother is handling it," she said, and her voice had a particular tone that I recognized, the tone she used when she wanted me to not ask follow-up questions. I came to the party. I wasn't going to, but Mr. Bray, Osei, had advised me to behave normally, not to tip anyone off, not to do anything that would make my brother or father suspect that I knew anything. So I bought a card. I brought a bottle of wine. I got there at 6:30 and I smiled at people I'd known for 20 years, my parents' neighbors and my brother's work friends, and my aunt and uncle from Cincinnati who drove 3 hours for the occasion. My brother had gained weight since I'd seen him last, which was Thanksgiving. He was wearing a sport coat that looked expensive, and he had the loose-limbed confidence of a man who believed, in a fundamental and unexamined way, that things tended to work out for him. He hugged me when I arrived and said it was good to see me, and then immediately turned to talk to someone else. My father was at the grill. He looked good, actually, better than he had in January, before the surgeries, before all of it. His back was straighter. He was laughing. I stood near the edge of the yard and watched him laugh, and I tried to figure out what I was feeling, and what I was feeling was grief, which surprised me. I had expected anger. I think grief came first because I was still, in some part of myself, hoping that there was an explanation I hadn't thought of, that somehow this was a misunderstanding, that my signature had not been forged by someone who shared my last name. There was no misunderstanding. It started, as these things always do, with money. Specifically, it started when I overheard my brother talking to my father near the corner of the house, behind the tent, in the gap between two conversations where they must have thought no one could hear them. "She still hasn't said anything," my brother said. "He was talking quietly, but I have always had very good hearing." "She won't," my father said. "She's too afraid of a fight. Always has been." "The second draw comes through in October," my brother said. "We need to move the account before then." I walked away. My hands were shaking. I went to the drinks table and poured myself a glass of water and drank it in 4 swallows, and then I got out my phone. I had already, at Mr. Osei's instruction, set up a consultation with the county district attorney's office. I had already, on my own initiative, been recording every conversation in my presence for 6 weeks using a voice memo app on my phone, which was legal in Ohio under single-party consent law. I had already contacted the financial institution that issued the HELOC and submitted a fraud affidavit. I had already done everything except the final step, which Mr. Osei had told me I could take whenever I was ready. I texted him, "I'm ready." He had told me it would take about 40 minutes. I went back to the party. I ate a plate of food I don't remember. I talked to my aunt about her garden. I watched my brother give a small toast about hard work and family, and I watched 43 people raise their glasses, and I raised mine too. 28 minutes later, I was standing near the back fence when my father appeared beside me. He had a look on his face I hadn't seen before. Or maybe I had seen it, but never understood it until now. "I need to talk to you," he said. His voice was quiet, but there was something underneath it. "Inside." I said, "Okay." We went through the back door into the kitchen. My brother was already there. He must have been watching for some signal from my father. He closed the door behind us, and I remember thinking very clearly, this is the moment where they were going to try to manage me. "We know you've been asking questions," my father said. I didn't say anything. "About the house," my brother said. "About the loan." "We can't explain it," my father said. "It's more complicated than it looks, and we were going to talk to you about it. We just needed more time," I said. "You forged my signature, Dad." There was a silence, and then my father's hand came up and hit the side of my face, open-palmed, hard enough that I stumbled into the counter. My ear was ringing. The room did that strange slow-motion thing that I've since learned is adrenaline. My brother grabbed me by the arm and then by my hair. I headed down that night, which I don't usually do, and I will never forgive myself for that small vanity, and he dragged me toward the back door. I couldn't get my footing. The tile floor was smooth and I was wearing sandals, and I kept trying to plant my feet, and he was stronger than I expected. He got the door open and shoved me out into the backyard, in front of everyone. In front of the tent and the catering staff and my aunt from Cincinnati and my brother's regional sales manager and my parents' neighbor who has brought us Christmas cookies every year since I was 5 years old. Everyone stopped. The music was still playing from the Bluetooth speaker my nephew had set up, something upbeat and completely wrong for the moment. My brother was breathing hard. My face was burning. I was on the ground. I had gone down when he pushed me out the door, caught myself on my palms. "You want to make accusations?" my brother said. He was loud enough that everyone could hear. "In front of all these people? After everything Mom and Dad have done for you?" Someone behind me made a sound. I don't know if it was a protest or just surprise. Nobody moved to help me. I got up by myself. I straightened up. I brushed the grass off my palms. My phone was still in my hand. I hadn't let go of it the whole time, which I think said something about what my body knew even when my brain was still catching up. I looked at my father. He was standing in the doorway. He was looking at me with an expression I didn't fully understand then and don't fully understand now, but what I read in it was not regret. I looked at my brother. "I filed the fraud report 6 weeks ago," I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "The police are already on their way. You just committed assault in front of 43 witnesses. My brother's face did something complicated. "You're lying," he said. 2 minutes and 11 seconds later, by my phone's timestamp, 2 police cruisers pulled into the street in front of my parents' house. What happened after that was both faster and slower than I expected. The officers came around the side of the house. Someone from the front let them through the gate. My brother started talking immediately, too fast, the kind of talking that sounds like an explanation but is actually panic. My father didn't say anything. He sat down in one of the lawn chairs heavily, like something had left his body. My aunt from Cincinnati came and stood next to me. She didn't say anything either. She just stood there, which was more than most people managed. The officers separated everyone. I gave my statement. I showed them the voice recording from my phone, the conversation behind the tent, my father and my brother discussing the second loan draw, discussing moving the account. Mr. O.C. had told me that recording might be the most valuable piece of evidence I had, and he was right. My brother was arrested that night for felony document fraud, identity theft, and assault. My father was taken in for questioning and later charged with document fraud and conspiracy. The financial institution froze the HELOC account. An investigation was opened into the contractor, who it turned out had a prior relationship with my brother that went back 5 years. The $47,000 in renovations, the new kitchen, the floors, the bathroom, had been funded using my forged signature on a loan secured against my parents' property. My brother had structured it so that when the house eventually sold, a portion of the proceeds would route through an account he controlled. My father had known. My mother, I learned later, had not let herself know, which is a different thing and a more complicated thing, and one I'm still working through. The case took 11 months to fully resolve. My brother pleaded guilty to fraud and identity theft. He received 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution, and a felony record that ended his pharmaceutical sales career effectively immediately. The company terminated him within 2 weeks of the plea. My father's charges were reduced in exchange for cooperation, but he had a criminal record now, and the relationship between us, whatever it had been, was something I didn't have words for anymore. I didn't contact a therapist until 4 months after the party. I probably should have done it sooner. What I found, when I finally sat across from someone who could help me make sense of things, was that the hardest part wasn't the fraud. The hardest part wasn't even the assault or the humiliation of being dragged across a kitchen floor in front of my parents' friends and neighbors. The hardest part was the arithmetic of it. $800 a month for 8 months, physical therapy, dental work, all of it adding up on one side, while on the other side there was my forged signature on a $60,000 loan, my name attached to a debt I never agreed to carry. I had thought I was taking care of my family. I had thought generosity was its own kind of safety. I had thought that if I gave enough, freely enough, without keeping score, the people who were supposed to love me would respond in kind. I understand now that wasn't naive. It was just wrong. The monthly transfers stopped, obviously. I moved into a different apartment. Smaller, actually, because I was repaying my own savings from the period when I'd been financially stretched covering their expenses. I got promoted at work in the spring, which helped. I started running, which also helped, though in a different way. What I kept from all of it was the knowledge that I had done the right things at the right times. When I found the folder in the filing cabinet, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry. I didn't send a 3-paragraph text at 2 in the morning. I went to a lawyer. I followed the process. I showed up to a party I didn't want to attend, and I stayed steady through things I cannot fully describe even now, and when the moment came, I was ready for it. The earring I lost in the grass was a cheap pair I'd bought at a market in Portland on a work trip 2 years ago. It cost $11. I don't know why I keep thinking about it, but sometimes I think about what it means that the most physical evidence of what happened to me that night, the proof that it happened, the thing that would have made it undeniable to anyone who asked, landed somewhere in my parents' backyard and was never found. I don't need it. I have 43 witnesses, 2 police reports, a court record, and a voice memo that runs for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, but still, I think about that earring. I think about all the small things you lose and never get back, and how you learn, eventually, to build something steady from what remains.